How do we translate D&I strategy into truly accessible events? Confex London 2023.
Hello and welcome to this morning's second session, day one. Super excited already. Just had a fantastic panel around diversity hushing. So making sure that actually we're sharing our diversity and inclusion best practices. Can you hear me? No. Can people hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, perfect. Sharing our DEI best practices, no matter where we are on our journey. So even if we're only at the start of it, sharing what we're doing, being really open and honest about that. But I'm excited for our next panel, because we're talking about something that's super, super important. It's not just a hot topic or a trend, it's something that should be embedded into all of our events, into our workplaces, and really needs to be considered with regards to budgeting, and making sure we're using the best kind of products, services, and making sure the co-creation is happening. So we're not guessing what people want and need, we're asking what people need from an accessibility perspective. And I'm going to let the experts talk about this. So do introduce yourselves.
It's really lovely to see so many people here for this talk, and this is an amazing stage, sponsored by amazing hosts, and we have live captioning here, so it's fantastic to see such a big audience for this. So my name is Orla Pearson. I'll just audio describe myself for anyone who might need that. So I'm a woman in her very earliest stages of her 50s. I have silver white hair, I'm white, I have red lipstick on, and I'm wearing black, and I have oversized glasses, so that should help you build a picture of what I look like. I've spent over 30 years in the accessibility field. I worked for 15 years with the BBC, developing live captioning for broadcast with deaf audiences and with broadcast. I moved on from the BBC and went freelance, and I set up a company because I really saw a need in the provision of accessibility to events and to meetings, to have a really professional service alongside all the other professional services that are supplied to events. So we provide live captions, sign languages, and other kind of access services to events, to people who have meetings, one-to-one to deaf and hard of hearing people as well. We have a broad range of clients, from small charities right through to huge corporates. Our most recent events that were quite fun was we did the opening of Creed 3, which is a great movie, a boxing movie, and one of the characters has hearing loss. So we live captioned that at Leicester Square, which is quite fun. We also live captioned in Hyde Park the Queen's funeral as well, to make it accessible to the public. So some really interesting things, and great to see accessibility in both of those kinds of events. More recently, I've been involved in developing software that makes it really simple to deliver accessibility to hybrid and virtual events, and that's called AccessLOOP. We're here today, both companies that I represent are here. I'm your chair today, and together with this wonderful panel, which I'm really excited about, and we have just about stopped talking to do the panel. We're going to talk about event accessibility. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, so I'm Ryan Curtis Johnson. I'm Director of Communications at the Valuable 500. The Valuable 500 is the largest global CEO network in the world. Well, I say that. We're second. The UN comes first. But it's a close. We are the largest global CEO network. What we drive, our founder, Caroline Casey, is registered blind. She is an activist and a real troublemaker. Quite like that about her. I also feel like I'm a bit of a troublemaker now too, being part of the Valuable 500. What we're trying to drive is disability inclusion within the workplace. And what we believe is if we can drive disability inclusion within the workplace, that trickles out into society. We'll have a more inclusive, and it will be access for all. Not just disability access, it should be access for all. And I come from an events background, so I used to work in this industry, and just to give an audio description of myself, I'm wearing a light tan suit with mid-length hair that's naturally got some blonde in it, obviously not naturally. I've got brown eyes and a white vest under my suit, and I'm in my mid-30s.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Shani Dhanda. I'm a South Asian woman who has a short stature. I'm wearing a very colourful blouse and grey jeans. I have mid-length dark brown hair and brown skin. I am a disability inclusion consultant, so I work with lots of different businesses and brands to really help them on everything to do with accessibility and disability inclusion. I also used to be in the events industry. I was an event manager for over 10 years for my sins. And I'm also an entrepreneur and a broadcaster, so I'm on shows such as Loose Women, Rip Off Britain, and other daytime and news shows as well. Thank you.
Meg.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Because I can't really hear myself talk, so it's a bit awkward. My name is Meg, and I work as a sustainability manager at the Bold Eco. And to audio describe myself, I've got brown hair pulled back into a low ponytail. I have on brown glasses, and I am wearing all black, and I am she/her. And you guys may be looking at me thinking, like, what does she have to do with this panel? I have something called an invisible disability, and it's been in the last few years that I've really struggled with the events industry, with virtual, with live. We'll get more into that in the panel, but I've started advocating for people in the disability community because there's so many of us, and we feel like the events industry is really behind on making sure that all of our needs are met.
Good, that's what we're going to talk about today. So this session is really to focus on, D&I is a huge buzzword, but we want it to be more than a buzzword. We want it to be real action and start to become included as part of the show, right? A real part of the show. That means budget, that means high quality, that means great delivery and early adoption. So that's what we really want. Now, Ryan, you work with 500 CEOs who have all committed to this, so they have a strategy around this, right? So you're working with these 500 companies, and they all have a D&I strategy, but we're not always seeing that at their events. I work for some really huge corporates, and I know they have a D&I strategy, but when I come to talking to their events people, there's no budget, there's no time, there's difficulties in delivery and all of that. So if someone signs up to the Valuable 500, what would you expect them to be doing around events, and what are they signing up to? And it should involve internal and external audiences, I'm assuming.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think the key to this is understanding that this is a CEO commitment. So the CEO has to provide their own wet signature. So if they're not committed to it, we're not going back to the rest of the teams within that organisation. We're going back to the leader of that organisation and asking the question why. And there are some great examples where, and I'm not just saying it because Shani's here, but Virgin Media O2, they have just recently, last year I attended a few of their events, and they were fully accessible, and they were really doing what good looks like. But I think what we have to understand, and I do, and I know Shani's going to agree with me on this one because we had a conversation last week about it, we're getting to a stage now where that whole line of everyone's on their own journey is sort of running out of time. And I think it's now more about what action, and so it's less talk, more action. So our latest thing that we're trying to drive is inclusion means action. You can talk a good talk, you can have it as part of your ESG, you can have it as part of your reporting, but what are you really doing? And I think what we're now doing is we are going back. And we're going back to organisations and we're asking those questions, we're highlighting, and we are asking people to leave. Now, we are the Valuable 500. We have more than 500. That was the campaign, so we have about 524. And we are asking now businesses to leave and depart from the Valuable 500 because they're not meeting the commitment that they promised to make. So I think by doing that, also as a commitment to ourselves, we want the spotlight on ourselves at the Valuable 500, so we don't speak on any panel unless it is fully accessible. We say no to quite a lot. You'd be surprised. The reason why a lot of people say no or then don't do it is because of budget. We can't afford to do that. We can't afford to do live captioning and all of that. And again, we then go back, and often the conversation is, so you penalise someone because of their disability. And how is that fair? Because I don't penalise anybody who doesn't have a disability to attend your event. And I think that's what we're trying to engage and get that. And the more we push back, the more that we kind of move forward with that, the better. So there is still some work, there's still a bit of groundwork, and it's a shock, I think, for some of our members because we got them onboarded, but now we've got to do due diligence to what we're trying to achieve.
I absolutely love what Ryan does. I'm not speaking unless you make it accessible, and I think it's the only way forward. And also asking people to leave. I think, I've been in the D&I industry for years, and it's always gratefulness because these huge corporates are paying attention, but actually, they need to do more than pay attention and show up for the drinks. They need to actually invest in it.
Yeah.
And I love it. Tell them all to leave. They're not making it accessible. Shani, I know that you worked in the event industry for a number of years, and you have translated that to so many. You've made such an impact on that industry, and it'd be lovely to hear what your experiences were, but also what you really see as the problem areas. And I know that you've actually done something very exciting in the events industry, so I'd love you to talk about that and share that with the audience.
Yeah, so my path into the events industry, it wasn't a big lofty dream, it was really out of necessity, and that's because we as disabled people really struggle to get into work and stay in work. So at the age of 16 I had to apply for over 100 jobs, and it wasn't until I removed any mention of my condition was I then offered an interview, and then I got a job. But that was for an entry-level part-time job that needed no qualifications.
Wow.
So that left me feeling pretty hopeless and worried about my future. And I thought, right, I have to go to university because I felt like I had to have a degree to fall back on. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just chose event management because in my family I'm always a person that plans the holidays, the parties, the get-togethers, and I thought I need to do something, I'll just choose that. But I didn't know that I was choosing a career that was so suited to my skill set, because I live in a world that isn't designed for me. I'm the height of a 4-year-old. So that means that from a really young age, I've always had to be creative. How do I reach my kitchen cupboards? I have to think outside of the box every day just to live, just to do basic things. But that's the exact skill set you need to work in this industry. You need to be creative, you need to know how to deal with crises and things like that. And it wasn't until I had an awards event, the kitchen flooded the day before, I had to change my entire venue. And my manager said to me, it's like, if that was anybody else, it would have been really flustered, and he's like, you just dealt with it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And then I really reflected on that. But I think it's really interesting, in the events industry, we ask people what their dietary requirements are,
100%.
but why don't we ask people what their access requirements are? Why are you assuming that someone's going to be able to get into the building and get around and get where they need to? So you're catering for one element of our needs, but you're not even checking if we can even get in or around. So it's a real irony there. And lastly, I'm dipping my toe back into the world of events, and I'm launching an internship because I want disabled people to be able to have that opportunity to get into events, because I was in the industry for 10 years and I didn't meet a single physically disabled person, but we have the skill set to excel in this industry. So if anyone's interested to find out more, please contact me, because you're just missing out on a really overlooked pool of talent, if I'm being truthfully honest. And we as disabled people are twice as likely to be unemployed and have to apply for 60% more jobs. So use us, event industry.
I think that resourcefulness, I work in events, and the last minute change of plans, okay, I need to solve this right now.
Yeah.
And, absolutely skills that disabled people have to have every single day of their life. So if there's anyone here who is interested in having that kind of apprenticeship in their company, please talk to Shani. We'll scale this.
Yeah.
It'll be amazing, right?
Or go back to your business
Yeah.
and suggest this.
Yeah.
So if you're not the person in this room that
Yeah.
makes that decision, you have an opportunity to go and make a change. We all have an opportunity in this room today to step away and say, what could I do differently? And if there was one thing I would say you could do differently, is go back into your organisation and suggest something that looks at hiring people with a disability, whether it's visible or non-visible. I'm all about, it's lovely to talk, it's lovely to say all these
Yeah.
things, but actually what are we going to go away and go and do something about today? Because unfortunately it doesn't change. We'll probably be back at Confex next year and there will only be 3 stages, which I can tell you the 3 stages that have live captioning and that are not fully accessible. So do you want to be part of that story or do you want to make a change? And we have a choice.
Yay. And also, you know, I'd like to see us moving past asking if anybody requires to just providing that.
Yeah.
We get a lot of people, well, we've asked everyone and no one wants the live captioning. And I'm like, well, there's so many audiences for live captioning. I don't believe that. Hello. So, you know, it's you know, people with neurodiverse people use live captioning, older people use live captioning, people with English as a second language use live captioning. None of those audiences are going to request it because they see it as deaf access. But you will be serving all of those audiences. Meg, we have to bring you in here.
I actually want to ask the audience a question. How many of you put captioning on Netflix? Please raise your hand.
Yeah, we have the 18 to 24-year-olds. Well, I have teenagers. They watch captioning with everything because they're on their phones at the same time. They will demand it from events. They're coming to events shortly, and they'll be looking for this as well. So, Meg, as a user, you have a unique experience and someone who needs accessibility at events, but also you have event experience and you have sustainability experience. So it'd be great to hear from you. And also, do you think the two cross over? We were having a conversation about this, weren't we?
Yeah, so I want to draw the attention to this venue right now. We all saw that carpeting was removed in terms of sustainability, but carpeting removes accessibility for me, because the reason why venues have carpeting in the first place is to reduce sound, but also when you're walking on concrete, someone who may have chronic pain, it may be hard for them to walk on it. So when I got here today, I was like, oh my God, like there's so much background noise, how am I gonna do this panel? It took so long for me to get in, I'm so flustered, like I was sweating everywhere. It was like, they said, calm down, it's fine. You know, these really do help. I didn't realize panelists could do it. And we talked beforehand what needs to be done for me. So carpeting is one, but we also talk a lot about, you know, we want to move digital. We want to remove signage. But if you think about, okay, you have an app. Can someone who is blind that relies on Siri, can they use that app? And I may be in my early 30s, but I'm not app savvy. Like, I don't know where are the stand signs? I'm confused. I'm like trying to find the stands. I'm in my early 30s, you know what I mean? So it's just thinking about when you design an event and you want to design in sustainability, take a pause and think about, okay, who am I removing accessibility for? Who am I excluding because I want to do something smart? For example, carpeting. A company called Target and Interface do circular carpeting systems, and they have a take-back program. And also, why are we not asking venues to have carpeting? Why do we need blue? Why do we need 10 different colors? Shouldn't it be the venue's responsibility to make sure that every area of the venue has carpeting and that is maintained? So it's just thinking about why are we not doing those things?
I think, you know, I think a new buzzword is sustainability, but let's not get rid of the other buzzword, D&I, within sustainability. And I think that's really highlighted that actually taking things out to be sustainable is taking things out for other people. Did you want to comment there, Shani?
I think as well, like, I know that disability isn't very well understood, but if there's one thing that you take away today is that it's not our conditions and impairments that disable us. It's the fact that nobody asks us what our access needs are. Nobody thinks about what we will need in order to be able to get there and thrive at the event. So stop disabling us, basically.
Yeah.
And
it comes back to the whole idea, though, when you look at sustainable, when you look at the UN goals and the sustainable growth goals, SDG 10 is all about inequalities. So if you want to be sustainable and you're following that goals, but yet you're completely forgetting about a demographic when you're organising something, you're really not following what those goals are. And I think that is what we are at a place where businesses, the younger generation, are smarter and more willing to call that out. And there are organisations out there that pride themselves of being against those UN Sustainable Growth Goals, and they are really not meeting the basic level of accessibility when it comes to events or even work life. And I think that's an important factor to look at.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. It's like we have them committing at the top with the valuable 500 and talking, and then we're not seeing it at this level. And you guys are event organisers, you have some part to play in all of this, and you can make a massive difference here. I'd like to talk about the types of accessibility that should be standard at events. I know, Ryan, you've said you don't go anywhere where there's not live captioning. Because it hits so many audiences, it's kind of a no-brainer for me. It's standard. I mean, we deal in things like sign language. I mean, do you guys have any other things that you think should be standard? Meg's hand up.
Yeah, so I always say start with the venue. Can someone actually get in the venue? If a venue, you have to go through the service elevator with the wheelchair, take it off your list. Like, people want to be, we create experiences. We make people feel welcome and want to network and be there. But if your first point of contact is taking a person around back, up a sketchy service elevator and through the kitchen or something, why are you even using that venue? So think about the venue and how are people getting there? So if they have to take 3 different trains and also a taxi with the wheelchair use, or the visually impaired, how are people getting to the venue? So if you're working in London, the Elizabeth line is a really great one. So look at venues that are up the Elizabeth line. And also, I've been looking at invisible disabilities a lot recently, and is there space to put in a quiet room? I don't have autism or ADHD, but I need that quiet room because a lot of noise, a lot of talking and trying to engage with everyone is really overwhelming for me. So sometimes I just need to step away for 5 to 10 minutes, breathe, and then get back in there. So quiet rooms benefit more than people who might need it. So just thinking about, look at the venue, what can I put in there to make it more comfortable for people?
I mean, I think follow Ryan's example. If the venue isn't accessible, say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to spend 50 grand with you because your event space isn't accessible. Because that tells that event that they need to do something about that. Otherwise they won't know.
And also, it's the law.
It is the law.
It's the law. So I think it's a really strong message if you're not going to spend your money there. That is voting with your pound and with your money.
But it also comes back to, and I know we've had this conversation a lot, if you went and spoke to your CEOs of your organisations, whether they're event planners, agencies, whatever they are, you are missing out on a capital of demographic. It's £22 billion in the UK.
I didn't know that.
That's a huge amount of expenditure that businesses, if you went and spoke to a CEO, they would be like, I want a bit of that pie. And I think it's about, I always come back and talk to a lot of our members about this, is about putting disability within the business strategy. And I don't want to see it there forever, but we need to just put it there for now. And it is like that whole checklist. We had that when Black Lives Matter happened. That is the only way that got through. They made a noise and businesses started to wake up. They realised they couldn't just talk a good talk. They needed to make sure they were being diverse on their panels. And diversity is often just considered race, or gender. And I think that's what we've got to understand, is we've got to put the D back into that, which is disability. And we have to look at it from a business structure of what that looks like. And going back to what you were saying, Meg, a really important factor, which really frustrates me on a regular basis, is the fact of having people who understand disability. There are experts out there. Shani does it. Orla does it with all the stuff that she does. Trying to do a quick fix within your organisation is not going to make it work. It will make you look foolish. You have to pay and hire talent that know what they're doing. And you actually sometimes have to hire people with a disability. And I think that's the key, because there is nothing worse, and I always use this example. There's a well-known person from a company who is in a wheelchair, and they never told the hotel when they got to the hotel that they were in a wheelchair. And the experience that individual had was a terrible customer experience, because the person on that front desk did not know how to deal with that person in a wheelchair. Where if a person who was able-bodied was able to walk in, they would have received a certain experience. And that's what's really interesting, because we have tech, and you look at the way in which that maps out and how someone's going to touch point all of those areas. We have to fix the human element to dealing with people and what that customer journey looks like. So it doesn't matter whether that person turns up, they're in a wheelchair, they're blind, they're neurodivergent, whatever they are, they get the same experience as the person who may not need to even explain. And then that means that person doesn't feel like they have to disclose. They should be able to just receive that experience like anybody else. And so then that makes it easier.
And just to build on that point, we also have to accept and understand the fact that living with a condition or an impairment, whether you are born with it or whether you acquire it, it's actually an average part of being human. We just don't have very much representation of it, which is why people are so fearful about it. So when we come into inaccessible spaces, it's really exhausting, it's really frustrating. You know, I'm a keynote speaker myself. I've spoken at over 200 conferences worldwide. Do you know, I've only ever had a height adjustable podium once. So if there's anything that I would ask you to all invest in, it's a height adjustable podium. And if there's not a company out there that does it, tell me, because that will be my next business venture, please.
Another one. No, and I think the spend is huge as well. And I mean, you know, people go on and say, we're looking for new audiences. Well, I tell you what, put accessibility in your events, you've got a whole new audience. And it's going to cost a fraction of any other marketing campaign. You won't have to do focus groups, you won't have to do research. You put accessibility in, people will come, 100%. And not just them, the people who love them, the people who know them will come too. And you know what? You're going to look great. You're going to look fantastic. Reputationally, it will do a world of good to any company.
But also
it's a business driver for event organisers.
Absolutely.
For me,
but also when you look at virtual, you know, it was good enough that during the pandemic, COVID-19, now it's everyone's got to get back in the room and be face to face. But you're then cutting off a whole audience of people that we told to shield, we told that they shouldn't be mixing with people, and so now all of a sudden we're saying we're turning that off. In fact, businesses thrived and the employment for people with disability increased, but actually those have now decreased on the basis that people are being expected to return to the workplace or attend events in physical form.
And I don't understand it. Why would you turn off hundreds and thousands of people virtually? Why would you turn that audience off? I experience this all the time. We need you on site. No, you don't. You really don't need us on site. We're doing this remotely today. There's people sitting in Germany, there's people sitting all over Europe doing these live captions, and it's sustainable as well. So why should event organisers make it a priority to consider and cost in, and I'm going to say high quality accessibility, not throwing AI captions in? We've invested in our whole show, we've invested in everything, but we're going to throw up something free. It's not accessibility for me anyway. And let's talk about the business driver, because I think we're getting there. And the reputational damage. I think there is some.
So last week I was listening to a talk by Habina. You don't know who she is. She is the first deaf-blind woman to go to Harvard Law School. Her story is absolutely incredible. But she was talking to a large group of experiential producers, and what she said was, it really stuck with me, was, you know, when you make your business accessible, you're reaching an untapped market. There's so many talented people out there, but then you're also reaching a more diverse audience. And what that does, it brings new ideas to the table, it brings different viewpoints. And I sat there thinking, like, all the best teams I've ever worked on in the past have been incredibly diverse, because they made me stop, learn, listen, try to take perceptions from different viewpoints. So a business will grow if you have people pushing it forward, giving you different ideas, helping you grow. So I think, for me, It's more of you bring more people in and be more inclusive, your business will grow because you are reaching a more diverse and a larger untapped audience.
I think for me, in a nutshell, accessibility helps to remove barriers that those are really, excluded, i.e. disabled people. It benefits everybody because when you solve problems for disabled people, you can extend that solution to everyone, and it's the law. Not only is it the right thing to do,
It's the right thing to do
it
as
is
well.
the law. But, a lot of people don't understand that everyday objects that we all use, a lot of them are actually originally designed for disabled people, like the humble keyboard on our laptop. That used to be a typewriter. A typewriter was created for a blind woman to write letters. An electric toothbrush, a bendable straw.
Text messaging.
All of these things were created for disabled people, but they benefit everybody. So, all you non-disabled people, you owe us one.
It's also, people kind of look at disability thinking, well, that's a certain group of people. It's coming for everybody.
Oh, with an aging population.
It's not
it
when,
is.
it's not if, it's when.
Yeah.
When will, and you will all need this accessibility.
Yeah.
So put it in for your future self.
Yeah.
Do your future self a favour and
Yeah.
put this stuff in.
The issue
Right.
is it's a society issue in the sense and the way in which we've been brought up and what is normal and how that picture and how that look and feel of what that looks like is all about. And the biggest problem that we have is we have a great opportunity now to change that, push back and make relevant change and important change and, flip it round and make people feel uncomfortable about those conversations. But I think if we don't, things will never change and we'll still be having these conversations in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years time. And I think we're at a stage now where we need change and we need to see it. And
I think everybody, we can't all do worldwide change, but everybody can make a change in the space that they're in.
yeah.
And if you're in an event space, you can be part of that change for diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
You can do something. And, small things can create huge things and movements.
And can I just say something a bit controversial?
Yeah.
Do. Please.
If your events aren't accessible, do not consider them a success.
Yeah.
Because there are nearly 15 million disabled
Yeah.
people in this country alone. If you're not open to those people and us and our money, then that's not a success.
Yeah.
We want to be able to access the same
Yeah.
spaces and the same opportunities and events as everybody else.
Yeah.
But quite often what we find is we have to pay more
Yeah.
to have this, to try and live the same lives as others, but we often have less or no choice.
Yeah.
And I think COVID was a real eye-opener because what we saw is change can happen and it can happen quickly, but it only happens when the need for change is deemed to benefit everybody.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love more flexibility to
Yeah.
work remotely if your job allows you to?
Yeah.
Disabled people wanted that pre-pandemic, but
I
we
know.
were always told no.
That can't happen.
No.
We
Yeah.
couldn't possibly.
No.
And within 24 hours, everyone was at home.
15 days it took. Most
Yeah.
businesses were able to be on a
Yeah.
virtual or on a remote process. 15 days.
And that was refused
Yeah.
beforehand.
And-
And it is.
And everyone post-COVID, they had a dedicated, person managing COVID protocol. So why can't we have a dedicated person managing accessibility?
Yeah.
We can. It's just that people don't understand it's an investment and it adds value.
Yeah.
And I think one day people will understand it, but it will be too late.
Mm.
And if you're not an early adopter in this space, if you already haven't thought about it, then it's already too
Yeah.
late.
And I honestly think this is a business driver for if you're going to and pitching to a company that has a D&I strategy, you should be pitching diversity and inclusion
Yeah.
as part of your pitch.
Yeah.
Because someone there will go, oh yeah,
Yeah.
we do this. With Valuable 500, I
Yeah.
remember now,
Yeah.
we're a member. Actually, yeah, this company's got
Yeah.
something different. It's something that makes you different, and it shows who you are as
Yeah.
a company if you're pitching for this. And for me, I would say to you, get a budget and get a decent budget. The graphics and the stuff is really important, but this is part of the show.
Yeah.
It's not an add-on. It's not, oh crap, we forgot to do
Yeah.
it. Let's see if someone can do it. I get those people on my door every day.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh, is it that much? Yes, it is. There are highly skilled people doing these jobs. You know, this is, I'm trying to professionalize it. This is a professional service, it's a professional addition, and it's a really good addition to your event. So get your budget sorted early alongside all your bells and whistles, and make it a bell and whistle, make it the highest quality you can do, and it will absolutely come back to you, I promise. Do we have any time for questions? I was hoping we would. I was trying to leave some. Can we take some questions? Because I think
you can hear me. You all hear me okay? Fabulous. So do we have any questions for our wonderful panelists? Don't be shy. Oh, brilliant.
we've bullied them into silence.
Hi.
Hi.
So our company, we don't do hybrid events. So we do corporate events, and obviously our concern is, you know, when we do hybrid, we're not going to get as many people on site, and you know, our sponsors aren't going to create the sales. So how can we make our events more accessible if we were to take that hybrid approach and kind of guarantee that we're going to get you know, the sales we need to continue doing that event?
I mean, I think you have to remember hybrid is also like a window into your event for people who are curious but might not go this time, but they might have a look at this event and go, do you know what, there's lots of people I want to talk to next time, so I'm going to come next time. It's hard to measure that stuff, and you know, we can't tell you that if you make it hybrid, well, you're going to get payback, but you are going to make it accessible. Okay, so captions in the room, captions on the live stream, you know, quiet rooms, audio description, all tag everything, all your media content. All tagging is just a description of your images. Do those small things; they'll make a massive difference to people who need it. Shani, sorry.
I think all I'd add is like there's really sophisticated software now that exists to help host hybrid events.
There is
that I experienced a lot of during lockdown. Dedicated spaces where people can network, where people can have one-to-ones, where you can go and hang out with the other attendees. It's not right to compare it with an in-person event. It's a completely different thing we're speaking about. However, it's a great alternative option, and you know, I founded the Asian Women Festival. When I host it in person, I have a few thousand, but when we host it online, I reach thousands of people in 38 countries. It's the best decision I ever made. So I think you have to understand, what do you want to get out of it? Does it align with your goals? And is this a right way forward for our strategy?
Or do you want to just do good? That's my simple question. So do you want to do good? Do you want to open the door to people that don't want to come to your physical event because they physically can't? That's the question I would ask.
It's not always about a measured return. It's the right thing to do.
Okay, got another question over here.
Hi, so we always ask, well, I'm an event manager and I always make sure that people ask the question. I learnt that last year at an event, that it's always best to ask. And I know that we would like to have our events naturally inclusive, so you wouldn't have to ask, but part of that process is to ask. But once you get the answer, it's actually not enough. It's like you actually have to contact that person and find out what their individual needs are. And that's where we fall down and we don't necessarily get the response that we need. And so having the right kind of access to consultants is important, but we honestly don't have money to pay for consultants for things. I'm a public sector, barely got enough money to actually scrape together to put the actual event on, let alone pay for the extra add-ons. So what advice, and it's such a broad area, but my main concern is around the neurodiversity piece, because there's a lot of things around physical accessibility, around sight and hearing, but neurodiversity is quite a new thing, and anxiety around being around in spaces like this post-COVID has become quite a big issue, but it's not something you get a lot of information about.
No. I think the key to it, this is just mine, I find the events industry always say we're amazing, we create great experiences, and we do. We put on a fantastic show. When you look at the Olympics 2012, the Paralympics, and everything like that, I just think you've got to practice what you preach. So you've got to put it out. You've got to do it. Yeah, it's going to cost you money, but once you make that uniformed and you make that part of the process, then that's part of it. I think if you're public sector, you even got more of a reason to do it. And it's really hard. And yes, there's always going to be money, but there's always really interesting when you go through a fine-tooth comb where money is spent on other things that's probably not as important.
Yeah.
And I think this is about allowing a demographic to be included. So if you want to talk money and you want to talk about that, you are basically saying this event is not inclusive. So if you're happy to write that on your event from now moving forward, that's absolutely fine, because then you're allowing the audience to say, I will not attend that event because it is not inclusive. So I think there are always going to be reasons and excuses around it, but I think we're past that stage. I think what I would love to see is the event industry say, this is what good looks like, and then going back to the companies and saying, this is what good looks like, this is the best way you do it.
Yeah.
And if they are a valuable 500 member, go and look on our website. You can research all the members on there. You can go back and say, well, your CEO committed to disability inclusion, so surely we should do that. And that's another way of then making people accountable. But I think you have got to find ways, be smart. And I think, isn't that what event people are great at? Smart, finding solutions, crisis, and all of that. And I think that's my stance. So it's probably not the answer you were after, but there are experts out there.
Meg, you and Juju.
I'll make this super quick. I just wanted to say, attend events about the disabilities that you want to research. I think in a few weeks' time in Scotland there's actually a neurodiversity conference. Attend the event, listen to what people are saying, what are they doing, just do your research. And I know a lot of event agencies are tiny, they may not have the budget, but take the time to go and learn about the disabilities that they're asking about and try to listen as much as you can and take those away and apply it to your events.
There's a disability expo happening here, isn't there? You're involved in
it. Also, how do you know the questions that you're asking are correct? Because quite often what I found in my work is people are focusing too much on people's medical history and diagnoses, and they're not actually asking what barriers are you facing if you're attending this event. So perhaps there's a bit of work that you can do with the questions, and also give people the option to ask you questions, to contact you as well, so they can make a decision. But the final thing that I want to say is the events industry does everything. Look at how creative you are. Providing accessibility should be the easiest thing for you. It is not difficult. Yes, you might have some fear. Yes, it might be a bit messy, but standardize this and it will just be as simple as everything else. Just be as simple as boring old health and safety.
I would also say that suppliers are experts, so talk to suppliers of accessibility into events. We do an awful lot in my two companies helping people to do it. I end up talking about everything as well as what we do. I would also say take out a round of tea and coffee or a round of drinks and you'll pay for the accessibility. People can do with that extra cup of tea or that extra drink. And I agree with Ryan. You don't have a budget, but you have to find a way. If you want to be accessible, you'll have to do something else and be creative. So and ask different questions. What can we do to make this a great experience for you? I think that's a better question than what do you need to make this accessible.
Well, can we just give a round of applause? Because absolutely fantastic. I've learned so many new things from all of you, so thank you so much for sharing. I've been really open and honest and sharing some of those hard truths. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shani Dhanda's logo in bright pink on a white background.